Time to revisit some childhood socks.
You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
Merry Christmas.
Happy.
But only if they... No crying. Oh, I have ways of knowing. My world.
Even circumstances.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new Christmas movie review. And this Christmas movie review is going to be for yet another Christmas Carol adaptation. And this is for one that happened in the 90s and featured some childhood icons called the Muppets. You know, like, y'all are familiar with Jim Henson's creations of the Muppets, where they were these kind of talking plush puppets that were controlled by people, but it looked like they weren't. Usually, and they had several movies and even their own TV. They had their TV show and several movies. So, yeah, this is going to be for the 90s' Christmas Carol version, The Muppets Christmas Carol, the Muppets' version of the Charles Dickens story. How does this go? Well, it's a retelling, obviously, of the classic Dickens tale of Ebenezer Scrooge, miser extraordinaire. He is held accountable for his dastardly ways during nighttime visitations by the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. So yeah, how was this film made? Well, following Jim Henson's death in May 1990, the talent agent Bill Heiber approached Henson's son Brian with the idea of filming an adaptation. Heiber told Henson that Christmas Carol is the greatest story of all time, you should do that, and later informed Henson that he had sold the idea to ABC as a television film. A longtime Muppets writer Jerry Joel was hired to write the script and decided to insert Charles Dickens as a standard narrator in order to remain faithful to the original prose of the written material. Henson stated that Gonzo was chosen because he was the least likely choice to play Charles Dickens, while Louis the Rat was added to inject some humor and serve as a Greek chorus. Established Muppet characters were initially written to portray the ghosts, with various accounts starring Robin the Frog, or Scooter, was to be the ghost of Christmas past, Miss Piggy to be ghost of Christmas present, and Gonzo, or Animal, as the ghost of Christmas yet to come, but the idea was scrapped in favor of new Muppet characters that would better underline the ominous nature. After the script was submitted for approval to ABC, the executives of Walt Disney Pictures offered to purchase the script for a feature film instead of a television release. And the English actors David Hemmings, Ron Moody, and David Warner, and the American comedian George Carlin were considered to portray Ebenezer Scrooge. Henson later offered the role to Michael Caine, who replied that he was going to play this movie like he was working with the Royal Shakespeare Company and would never wink. It would never do anything Muppety, and was going to play Scrooge as if it is an utterly dramatic role and there are no puppets around him. And he took inspiration for the role from Wall Street Cheats and Embezzlers, and thought they represented a good picture of meaningless and greed, according to him. So after that, film was obviously shot, marketed, and released. The film would then go on to be released in the United States on December 11th, 1992 by Buena Vista Pictures, and it was a modest box office success and received mostly positive reviews. It was the first Muppets film to be produced by Disney, whose parent company would later acquire the rights to the Muppet characters and assets in 2004. As for my reaction, well, I think of all the Christmas Carol adaptations, this may just have to be my third favorite adaptation of the story behind 2009 and Scrooged from the 80s. This is also my second favorite Muppet film behind the first Muppet movie from the 70s. Like, when I was a kid, guys, I was this really big Muppets fan. Basically, what's pretty great is this version is actually narrated by the great Gonzo playing Charles Dickens and his sidekick Rizzo the Rat. They follow the story of Curmudgeon and Ebenezer Scrooge on Christmas Eve night when he is visited by three spirits that show him the meaning of Christmas. And central to Scrooge's emotional journey is Bob Cratchit, who's Kermit the Frog in this version, and his family, his wife's obviously played by Miss Piggy, with simple, hardworking lives proved quite inspirational. And the reason why this version of the story works so well is because not only does it provide the humor that one would expect from a performance, but it also brings a heavy emotional drama as well. And you wouldn't think you could get teary-eyed over a Muppet, but that's exactly what happens. The comedy is on the fringes, mostly provided by Gonzo and Rizzo, playing the narrators, while the story plays out about as expected. The performance of Michael Caine in this, who was before this wasn't really known much, but is now known for many other projects, is also a pretty visual treat. Again, one of the best Scrooge portrayals ever put to screen. Even like Caine is such a great actor that he knows the right beats to hit. At the end of the day, neither the Muppets nor Dickens' classic tale get compromised, but neither are allowed to fully be in this surprisingly faithful adaptation. And a lot of the irreverent humor of the Muppets gets toned down. No, like notice how for example here, why I say that is because Gonzo and Rizzo do provide the most comedy of this, but once the third act with Ghosts of Christmas Yet to Come happens, they get removed from the third act entirely to allow for the sentiment of the story to be present. And at the same time, the story isn't given the full pathos it deserves. And I think kind of is somewhat a bit stiff as Scrooge at times because because Muppet gigs in the background. This kind of tension is never enough to ruin the film or even really damage it. It's kind of an annoying aspect to the film though. And the puppetry is mostly smooth if some of the movements are jerky, but Michael Caine played a convincing Scrooge. While a lot of the dialogue stayed true to the book, it had some elements of typical Muppet humor, and the cameos from Animal and Swedish Chef were absolutely hilarious too, as was the Huey performance in Scrooge's workplace and the part where Dickens lights Rizzo's tail by mistake, and the first song is the most memorable, and while the rest were initially forgettable, they were pleasant enough with a touch of festive spirit. And the whimsical of somewhat generic incidental music had its Christmassy charms as well, and the voice acting for the Muppets stayed in line with that from the original Muppet Show, despite Kermit's voice actor having changed. Like, Gonzo was even perfect as Dickens to narrate the story, while Kermit has provided top-notch support as Bob and Emily Cratchit, respectively. And part of what I love about this movie is how they're able to keep the fun of the Muppets here, and yet still tell a heartwarming story of A Christmas Carol. There are scenes in the movie where I honestly do get a little emotional, but I'm kind of shook with stuff like this. I think that the effort put in by Caine contributed a great deal to the emotional side of the movie, and I think if played by another actor, the main result may not have been nearly as good. That's not to say it's not a well-made movie overall. It's great, but I'd have to say my favorite parts of the movie would have to be some of the songs. They're catchy. They're even catchy as I think the best song of this is probably Marley and Marley, performed by characters Waldorf and Statler. Yeah, so because in this version there's two Marleys instead of one, since Waldorf and Statler are playing both Marley. And when I was a kid, I kept thinking this song was, when they say we're Marley and Marley, I originally thought they were saying we're Marley and Bob Marley, which was kind of a weird thing to think of as a youngster. But that'd be kind of even more hilarious if they said there were Marley and Bob Marley. That'd be kind of weird though. There's even some funny moments too, like in the beginning of the movie when Scrooge arrives at work, he finds this client named Applegate waiting for him to talk about his mortgage, and how the scene goes is, "Please, Mr. Scrooge, I know you're very angry about this, and I didn't mean to fall behind in the payments. Lord knows, it being Christmas and all. Oh, please don't shout at me, sir. That and of course little Gwen, her lungs aren't right. The doctor takes his share, don't he? I mean, you can yell and scream and you're right, but it won't do no good, because on the stone you can't squeeze blood from, and that's the truth. Thank you for not shouting at me." I kind of like how Scrooge doesn't want to hear his complaints, but even he clearly knows that screaming's not going to do any good, so he just harmlessly tosses him outside and then just harmlessly kicks him out instead. So it also kind of shows he's not entirely bad, too, so, because he at least was courteous enough not to shout at Applegate. But now, there's obviously going to be some bad qualities with this. So now we get to the bad parts. I know, bah, humbug. Once again, I'm not a fan of the musical numbers, except for Marley and Marley. They're kind of okay, but they're not really catchy or memorable. I kind of feel like we didn't really need this to be a musical. I think Marley and Marley could have been the only song in here. They did kind of work, but they were kind of quickly forgotten. And of course, as for the plot should already be well known by now. Or you would be the ghost of Christmas past not to know it. Because it's a Christmas Carol adaptation. We all know how the plot goes. We've seen this story get portrayed by all over the media as well. So I don't think it's much of a shock here. I also feel like of note, and sadly lacking in most movies aimed at kids these days, is the presence of some truly spooky and scary moments, like the Spirit of Christmas Future, for instance, wouldn't look out of place riding on the back of a felbeast in The Return of the King. Like, it's literally just this, it seems like just this walking hooded statue, the whole sequence. It's all it literally looks like. And the Muppets don't really do anything special with the story here, so this one kind of just blends in with all the other Christmas carols. Like, some of them are just really background characters, and that's about it. But despite that, The Muppets Christmas Carol is a perfect adaptation for the much younger crowd if they don't want to get too scared easily of the story, or aren't old enough to watch the 2009 version. I would definitely recommend buying this movie for yourself for sure. Anyways, that's it for my review of The Muppet Christmas Carol, and if you're wondering how I'm going to rank The Muppet Christmas Carol, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you want to see a lighthearted adaptation of the story, then I would recommend watching this and then buying it and adding it to your shelf for sure. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank The Muppets Christmas Carol, I'm going to give The Muppets Christmas Carol a 9 out of 10. There we go. There's my review for Muppet Christmas Carol, and in the new year I will plan some other Muppet reviews, so you guys know my other favorite Muppet films. Anyway, and you're wondering what's going to be next. Well, next one's going to be a TV special. And it's for, you guys know the Charles Schultz Peanuts game? Yeah, a Charlie Brown Christmas is going to be next. And until then, guys, that'll be it for this review. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.